All right, let me do this. Let me do this properly, dude. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. Have a good time with me, please, all right? I've been waiting to do this for a hot minute, to be honest with you. I think that for me, my tier list is going to be different from other people's because I feel like we're going to be dealing with some picks that I think are just not going to be as viable in other people's opinions versus where I think they're probably like top tier or whatever. And I think that's going to be a very, very situation. Like, it's going to be based on preference. And I think that at the end of the day, this is my opinion, bro. So I think we're going to go with that, right? I'm going to go off the gods that I think are viable for the jungle, but not like troll picks. Like, I'm not going to play Agni in the jungle if I'm playing in ranked or whatever, right? Let's start with Achilles. I think Achilles, for the most part, is pretty solid. I don't think he's top picked. He's like a must ban, must play. I think I would give him like a solid A right now at the moment. I think an argument, like, at his worst, he could definitely be like a B tier. I think Achilles is like, he's like really, really good. I don't think he's really, really bad. I think he's a solid pick no matter how you look at it. I think he's really, really good into compositions that have like execute or where execute gets past like saves, like Capri, for example, to name a few. I think that's something that we definitely could work well with him being in that composition against the enemy team. I don't know if he might be adjusted towards B. I think he might be a little bit more situational depending on like what other gods are going up. There might be better choices. But I'm not entirely sure if I would pick him. I'd pick him on a regular. He's actually a personal favorite of mine. Kwang is, to me, I'm going to skip these guys because I don't feel like any of these guys are actually viable right now at the moment. Kwang, to me, feels like he's actually a solid hyper carry late game. I think that he's a little bit weaker now that Stone of Fall is no longer in the game. Or I won't say no longer in the game, but like it's a little bit weaker than its previous rendition. So I think for me, I think he's a solid pick. I think he's a good B tier, maybe A tier. Because I've seen people throw down with him in any game. I think he's pretty viable in almost any game too as well. Unless your composition is kind of this kind of goes for any god though. But like if your composition is like heavy magical, picking out Kwang as a jungle is probably a bad idea. But I think he's pretty solid for the most part. Arachne, booty cheeks. I'm not gonna play her at all, dude. I don't like the god as a whole. I feel like anything she can do, Osiris, Erlang, Kali could do better. Literally, team fights, Kali just runs it. You know, especially late game. I think. Osiris runs team fight games even better than she does. The 1v1 games, I think there could be an argument for her doing really, really well because she has like a life steal based off of her 1 proc, I believe, and the 2 is a stun, as well as like the 3 being a slow. So she has a lot of like stuff in her kit, but I feel like outside of that though, she's very, very easy to lock down, very, very easy to bully if you play your cards right. And I think that right now, I would say that she's not as strong as other gods. That's just my personal opinion. I've seen some people pop off on her, so there's some exceptions, but exceptions are not what I'm going based off of. I feel like Bakasura he's better than Kali, or not Kali, but Arachne. And one of his biggest boons, one of the boons to this attribute is the fact that he can hyper farm. He's one of like the best hyper farmers in the game, right? But outside of that, team fight wise, I think his team fight's a little bit better than Arachne, especially with like if we do considering like the ult for ult, because like he actually locks people down and he actually causes like a big amount of like a lot of chaos, and he can hide behind his minions if he's getting like going against auto attack gods. So like he can use a lot of the ultimate attributes to his advantage. He can eat the minions off of it and all that. Like so, I feel like he does a little bit more than Arachne. But I do feel like if he was to go against like an Kwang, for example, box for box, I feel like he'd have a big time, like trouble going for it. And a lot of times I'd probably see him play defensively out of it. I think depending on how the game's going, I think also Achilles just does more with like range and his viability in terms of like what he can provide in his kit. It's really, really strong, really, really strong. I don't know. I feel like I could make an argument for him being B tier. I think I can make him B tier, but I feel like he's not as choice as other people. Bastet recently got a new change. I kind of feel like Bastet, to me, was always kind of like not really high of the spectrum, but like her 1 actually does a fuck ton of damage, bro. Oh, did I skip a guy? I'll come back to her. I'm sorry. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like Bastet's kit kind of goes a little bit more, it's a little bit more focused for isolations and whatnot, and that's good and bad depending on how you look at it, because what she provided with her ult kit kind of could go to more than one person, whereas like her ultimate now is a little bit more, I'm going to 1v1 somebody and hopefully get them out of the game. And I think that's okay. Seeing the actual ult in action, it's still, you could play around it pretty well, whereas like the ultimate before, Enemy team players really couldn't play around it outside of Aegising themselves, you know, like, because she'd just go in with her ultimate already procced and she does extra damage, right? Whereas, like, this new ultimate she has, she can isolate somebody, but if they have beads, they just get out of it, you know, which is that's an interesting factor. It's a good beads burner now, too, which is something I think she didn't have before. So there's some viability about that. I think she's kind of with Bakasura at the moment. Being solid, but not like crazy good comparatively to other people. I think her poke damage is a lot more. I gotta play her a little bit more, but I feel like she might actually be viable at B tier too as well. All right, let me backtrack. A Willix to me, I think she's B. Not top of the line, but she has some really good viability, especially as a niche pick. And the reason why I say that, Jump captures it with her ultimate. She doesn't capture these two, so you notice how like there's a difference there, right? So she can actually play into these guys pretty well. So like they're trying to run away, you capture them out, you lock them down, or you can have the initiate to burn them to playing defensively, right? So like her kit is really, really good. I also kind of see her as more of a niche pick, especially if you have her stuff benefits really well off of compositions that are based off of knockups. So I feel like right now, if she has a good team composition that gives her knockouts, Vulcan, Hebo, just to name a few, even Cucullin's ults that do ults like, you know, that knock his first ult when he's not transformed knocks people up, like those things to be able to play off of her other teammates make her very, very strong. But it's also conditional on that too as well. She can play off her own too, don't get me wrong, but like for the most part, a lot of times when you're doing team fights and whatnot, especially in the late game, she's kind of reliant upon the team kind of making plays, and then she responds to it in accordance, right? Either playing for a backline push, or maybe someone's getting a setup for her ult so she can kind of create momentum that way, and they get a pick, and then, you know, it's a 5v4 instead of a 5v5 or something like that. So I think that's definitely good. Camazotz, I think right now, because of his boxing potential and how strong the burst meta is, he might actually be S tier for me. I think he's actually really, really strong. Like his 2 is very, very important in his kit to like be able to box people and whatnot, but when you're in a team fight and a lot of hecticness is going around, the ideal situation, the way I would say it, is you're playing for a flank, right? And you go in and you catch somebody not paying attention to you, you throw your 2, you throw your 1, you just throw your kit at them. They're pretty much dead. And then if they do turn around and they survive it long enough, you're going to heal up to be able to out-sustain them in those fights. Or you can just ult out and you're pretty much safe. And now that they updated his ult so that as he's going up in the air, he doesn't take damage, he's a lot stronger. A lot stronger now. And that was one of the biggest deficits he has, that like he could play risky plays, and with his ult, theoretically, he should be able to get out. But because of him taking damage as he's going up in the air, it's not as viable, right? It's like those risky plays are a lot more riskier. Like they were a lot more detrimental to him, and I think that's something he's benefiting now that they fixed that update. So I think that's pretty crazy for him. In general, just like he's got really good 1v1 targeting. I think his ultimate has some really good fighting potential in a team fight. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but like his 1 bounces off of people. Like if he hits an enemy guy with it, it also bounces off. So like it can cause like a bit of a disruption amongst the team too, and he can get in and benefit from that too as well. So I think Camazotz is pretty strong right now. I don't know. I think he's actually really, really good. Oh my god, this new god. If y'all didn't see my last ranked game, bro, she OP. She is actually strong damage. I think she is worth banning 100%, bro. And it's literally like, just forget CC setup. I think forget CC setup for a second here. She does too much damage. She's OP when it comes to her damage. And with the itemization the way it is right now, her scaling is ridiculous. It's just bonkers, bro. That's all I'm gonna say. It's just bonkers. Add CC into it, where she like people can lock her down while you're doing your thing. She is just a monster, an absolute demon. Like I got so many like fucking nasty kills in team fights because they're just laying it up for me, and I'm slam dunking every single one of them, and just on my own. You know, follow up with an ult. They're starting to run away from it. You keep following them, ult them again, and they're still following. Like it's just so good, dude. She just does too much damage, and I think that's what makes her a monster right now. If they nerf her damage scaling just enough to where she's not too overpowered, she's going to drop tremendously into this to like a solid A or B, to be honest with you. But I think that's what makes her so strong in the game right now, is the fact that her scaling is so high. So you nerf the scaling, you nerf the god in general. The god's no longer viable as much as other gods are. So that's my opinion on it. Can she stack up against late game gods like Kali, for example? I think she can. I think an all-in burst composition, because of how strong her damage is, if she throw, like, I think just even without an ult, 3-2-1 into her or something like that, just an example, like, you know, using her 3, her 1, or her 2 in tandem with each other, maybe getting procs with like hi-rez, for example, which is very easy to get on this god. She can one-shot somebody. She can get somebody out really, really quickly. I did it to a Tsukiyomi recently in my last ranked game. I'm bragging about it, you know, take the victories where I can get them. But yeah, she's overall really, really top tier. I would ban her. if I was worried about a jungle pick in general, she's one to ban. I think Camazotz can be played around somewhat if you play it right. Cleo is hard to play around. Like her sneakiness, everything about it just makes her ridiculously strong, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I think Cabrakan play, and I actually like him as a jungle option. To be honest with you, he's kind of like a mini Loki or a big Loki. But I think he's kind of more niche pick, too, to be honest with you. I think only a certain amount of people play him, and even then they only, like, the pocket of people that play him and then also play him very, very well, to me, is very, very small. I'm not one of those guys yet, but I definitely think that Cabrakan in a one-shot build type meta, he can do it. And I think that's what makes him a little bit more viable in those options. So I would say Cabrakan is worth putting on the board because basically what Assassin Jungle is like right now is a burst meta. So I feel like he already, if you were to build in the way that people build him for one-shot purposes, he can do that. And that was before the nerf, before the changes, the buffs to like the jungle items, like Jotuns and all that. He can still fit in this meta. I think the only problem is that can he, his early game is kind of poop. So I think that makes him a little bit weaker. I'd even make an argument for him being A tier, but because of his farming, you know, lack of farming and whatnot, how long it takes for him to get going, it does take a little bit. Take some of the items, and some of those items are a little bit more costly. Especially compared to like something like Jotun, for example, I think he's a little bit weaker on this list. So that's why I put him in the middle. Like the way I consider like B tier is like very niche. It's very viable in certain compositions, but not the top of the line. And I think that's an honest statement for me for him. So I'll give him that. I don't think any of these gods are actually worth playing in the jungle except for Gilgamesh. To me, Gilgamesh is OP too. And I'll say this like this. I feel like Gilgamesh right now is really, really strong in team fights and single targets. He can do both very, very well. And I'll give you an example. His 1 is a slow. His 2 is a knockback as well as a stun if it lands on another target, such as a wall or god. You could use minions against them too as well. I'm going to be honest with you. Gilgamesh is OP. His ultimate has big radius. It's a slow. It's a root if they stay in it too long, which if you play it right, you can bounce them into your wall and you're just boxing him nonstop, right? His kit is nasty. His 3 can use as an initiate or an escape, and to believe it or not, that 3 does a lot more damage. It's actually one of the higher damaging abilities in his kit, if you're just looking at just initial damage, and it's really, really good. Case in point scenario, too, is like I've been able to go against hypercarries like Kali and be able to do enough against them to a point, and this kind of requires a little bit of like guerrilla tactics going against them. So, sorry, I pushed the wrong button, but like guerrilla tactics going against them. Like if you could play around the Kali's ultimate and really kind of bait out certain things from her, when you do take your full initiate kit, you're just stomping. So I think Gilgamesh is worth banning. I think Kama would give him a run for his money because he can jump out of the ult, as well as he can iframe or immunity frame with his 3 as well, of the kick, as well as his he can immunity frame a lot. And I think in terms of like if it's ult for ult, I believe that Camazotz can kind of get out of it. But I think that like toe to toe, whoever initiates on who first, it's going to be a very, very close fight. And even then, I think that if like full build Gilgamesh is going in on somebody, he's tearing some cheeks up. And personal favorite, Erendite. You know, you get more value out of your ult, even if you're not locking them inside of it with damage and stuff. So, and you'd be surprised how many people like think that they're safe, and I just walk up close enough to throw my ult, and I walk away. And I walk away with so much confidence because like Erendite and all the other ability items I have just allow me to just to throw it, and that thing does a crap ton of damage on its initial hit, and I just walk on, move on to the next fight, you know, or do whatever. So, like people sleep on my boy, but that dude with his AOE circle abilities 3, 4, and his lockdown with 1 and 2, it's strong. 2 for the 2 versus 2 in jungle and mid lane in the early games. He is a monster. Blink kick 1 automatically. Any little bit of damage you get from your mid laner, that's a guaranteed kill. If they don't beads it immediately or beads it before the kick actually fully launches them, they're in trouble. And I've caught in so many first bloods with it because of that dude. Shout out to Time Bomb. He also helps me out. But I definitely think that like I think this god is definitely dominant and that's even with them nerfing so much of his kit recently too as well. I think the ultimate, side note, this is a complete tangent here, but the ultimate on him is actually super unnecessary. I think his ultimate was fine. Maybe it's even more broken because they were playing the Jotuns update early, like later than that. I don't know, semantics, but I think the last nerf on him was a little bit much. But even then, he is still a strong god and he's super fun. TLDR. Daji, I think she's the next on the list, right? Daji to me, someone made me a believer of this goddess, excuse me. She can do a lot, man, on single target alone. I think that an argument can be made to deal with her. Like, for example, I would almost say she's S tier because, like, the kick, like, when she throws her 2, I believe it is, her 2 while she's like scraping at people or whatever. She is knockback immune, I believe, right? Or knock up immune in general. So Gilgamesh's 2 can't stop her out of it. So he's just pretty much got damage until she gets done with that. And then hopefully get the kickoff. But if you're going for damage right on top of each other, right off the rip, a lot of times she may catch him slipping. However, with that being said, Achilles, for example, a blink into Achilles, and then she starts throwing her 2, 1 stun. And with the way I build Achilles, being able to get big benefits off of that CC, kind of don't care if she blinks on me. And like with Achilles built-in passive, he's a little bit more tanky than your average, like what you would consider. So I think a lot of people don't realize that about his passive, right? So Daji going into that fight actually would have to play that a little bit more carefully because he can actually capitalize off of her blink. He wants you to blink in her. I've actually said it plenty of times when I played Achilles, like, I want this Daji to blink into me because I'm going to rip her open. And I actually caught some people slipping with it too as well. But I think what's crazier about her, which is why she may kind of balance the scale up a little bit more in her favor. If she goes up in the air with her Paolo, for example, it's like an Ares ult, right? A mini Ares ult. It's not as strong as his because he can hit all 5 as long as they're within range, right? Hers is a single target. I think she could hit up to 3 people, right? That right there is really good team setup. So, like, a lot of times as a jungler, I don't like initiating on, like, being the one that's starting the fight, especially at late game, because it causes a lot of focus on you, especially since junglers are, like, the strongest carry roles right now at the moment. And a lot of guys initiating on that get punished if they're not really like, unless they clack people out, it's a 1v1. If it's like a 1v5 where he's like the one initiating in or she's the one initiating in, a lot of times that jungler is going to get punished. And that's what causes people to lose their team fights and eventually the game, right? With Daji, she can blink in, and by the time they respond, she's already up in the air with Paolo. And then she's setting up for a team fight. And at that point, so much chaos is going, and hopefully your team is following up with the Daji, and then you get a lot of value out of it. Additionally speaking, if you're getting pressured as a Daji, you can Paolo for safety and buy some time for your team to react to it. So she has a lot of viability, especially with her ultimate and her blink. Her blink can bounce to safety, like she can get in and out pretty well. Really, really solid pick. Really, really solid pick. I don't think that she outboxes some of these guys. I think they'll give her a run for her money, with certain circumstances being in play. And I think that's important. It's like the circumstances will kind of dictate these, but she has a really strong case for A and S, which is what she saw. I'm not good at her yet, so I'm not going to talk much more about her, though. Next on the list is Fenrir. Man, with this new meta, I'm actually kind of tilted at Fenrir. I hate Fenrir so much, bro. And it's because I don't play him at the top end tier yet. Like, I feel like I play him okay, but it's nothing like, yo, you got to watch out for this kid's, this kid's Fenrir. Like, I'm not that guy. You're not that guy, pal. And I feel like that's something that I really wish that I could do better with. But I think that this statement, I'm going to leave it to you guys here with the way the itemization is currently. I feel like guys like Fenrir burn out in the late game, unless they have such a huge, strong early game where they just dominate. They're getting like 10 kills before 5 minutes or some shit like that, right? Like that right there is the exception, right? But in general, a Fenrir that's playing on equal footing with another good jungler or another good team, like team for team, and they're both evenly scaled and all that, his early game pressure is going to be a dangerous thing to watch out for, but he is not going to be as strong in terms of team fights later on. He kind of becomes more of an ult bot, or he's going to be kind of a cleanup guy. And I think that these guys can do a little bit more than he can, but I think that just because of how strong his early game is in general, with some of these guys trying to do stuff like knockups or whatever the case may be, he's immune with it with his brutalize. So like that gives him some viability against some gods like Gilgamesh. Like I can't kick a Fenrir when I'm Gilgamesh, and they're brutalizing in. So I think for me, I think he's a solid A. I think his early game is just monstrous, especially if you know how to play him very, very strongly. He falls off a little bit more in the late game, but I think in general he has what it takes to give people the edge they need. And I think that his setup ability is really, really good. His ability to box with people is pretty strong. His ult setup in case all else fails, if he needs to like isolate somebody or help set up for somebody else so he can get his team ahead, which is something that for me as a jungler, I'm pretty greedy. I want all the kills if I can have it because I feel like I can carry games, right? But like if you feel like, all right, this guy's a good player, if I can get him a kill, then that's great. And I feel like these two do this very, very well, but these four kind of don't. Maybe Achilles if you're just looking to give a stun so that they can finish him off, but most of the times you're gonna if you're going for a kill, like I don't know, I think you just go for the kill if you're Achilles, right? I feel like this itemization changes that we have recently for junglers make him a little bit more solid. I think maybe his late game is even less weaker than it was before. But I can't swear by it, so I'm going to leave it there. I think he's solid A. Solid A. I think an argument could be made for him S as well. And that's what's really good about these guys. These guys right here, they're super solid. I think these guys have a slight edge because of what their kit provides for them and all that, and that gives them the viability to be a little bit more desirable as a pick. I think I'm going to go with Erlang next here. I think Erlang to me, I think is going to be a little bit more niche pick too as well. I think he could do better than these guys, in my opinion, especially in the early game phase. I've seen a lot of people get caught off guard with like the early blink, 2 knock up, and by the time that they get finished with mannequins, he's already killed them, right? And he had a little bit of additional damage there too as well. He's really, really strong early game. But one of the things that makes him very, very weak is the fact that he is so... Any type of slow, root, or cripple really, really affects him bad. Like, he actually gets... it's a noticeable impact on his kit. For example, if he does turtle to get away... any type of slow, that he ain't moving nowhere. He's gonna be just wobbling right there where he's in place, and then you guys just clean him up, right? And I think that kind of hurts him. But his early game is pretty strong, and I think that if he gets momentum, kind of like Fenrir, he could do very, very good in team fights as well with like his ultimate. He's kind of like an Athena taunt. However, I feel like Fenrir could do what he does, but better. That's kind of why I feel like I kind of feel like he could be either A, depending on who plays him, and then at worst B or C. I don't know. I kind of feel like he could be A. I kind of feel like he could be A, but I think I'm going to leave him at B because I feel like Fenrir just does more in general for the team. Yeah. AoE stuns, the whole works, where he has a lot of single target root. He's a little more single target oriented outside of his ultimate, and I think that's the only thing that makes him a little bit more team group oriented. Whereas like Fenrir could stun anybody that's like stacked up, close enough. He can ult people, so like his team fight utility is a little bit stronger in my opinion than Erlang's. Whereas Erlang, I think he's more of an isolationist than anything. Get that one pick and then play off of that, and then as the team goes on, he can taunt them in to keep them in, things of that sort. So I'd say I'll leave him at B. I'll leave him at B for now. But definitely a strong guy. I climbed a lot with him in the early diamond ranges when I started playing in season 8. So got a love for him. I think I'm in the top 16, top 15 more wide still at the moment. So I'll take that. I don't think there's anybody else on this side here, so we're gonna move down the list here. I've seen people play Hercules. I think I really don't play him in the jungle, but I think he has a lot of good potential setup. I don't think he fits in the meta of a jungle role right now currently though, so I don't think I'm gonna put him in there. I think he can be, but I don't think I want to. Hun Bats for me, bro. I have a love-hate relationship. I feel like people do he should be doing more damage than what he actually does. For some reason, he doesn't. I kind of want to say his ultimate is probably B or A tier at least, because it's a really good team fight ult. But the rest of his kit's kind of mediocre to me. I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent. I kind of want to place him at C. I think if I'm playing in a game, I feel like I'm a little bit more worried about these guys being in play than Humbats. I'm not really afraid of Humbats, especially once I hit level 12 as a jungler. Like basically my thought process, I'm gonna pick one of these guys and I'm gonna bully him. Get to 12 faster than him. Just maybe avoid the fights where he's going to try to set up for a team fight. I mean, we just play safely there. And then once we hit 12, it's like, I don't give a fuck about your ultimate then at that point. Unless it's like on low cooldown, which is possible. I'm going to leave Messi. This is my tier list. I'm going to do it. I see people like Huyi. I think hunters are... Certain hunters that have like CC in their kits are super viable. I think he's B tier. I think these guys can outbox him. Trade for trade. I think these guys can contend with him. Like a Willix can ulti him out of his 3 if he tries jumping away. So like if he's playing defensively, then she catches him. It's GG. And I think blink on him and still do damage. So like they could take him on pretty fairly. So I think he's pretty solid. The only thing that's kind of dank though is that like his 1 is what really makes his kit super super strong. I kind of feel like Huyi in inside the jungle, like if you're fighting inside the jungle, he's a lot stronger. I think I can make an argument for him being A. Outside of that, in like laning, in like lanes where like the spaces are a little bit open, you can't bounce as much. B tier. And I think that's solid. I think that's a solid depiction of that. I see some of you guys saying Huyi's B tier. Some of you guys saying is Hun's B tier. Yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't think she's actually worth putting in there. I've seen people play Janice. I think that's a very, very niche one, so I'd say B or C in terms of play and what you could do for your kit. But I think like he has like a lot of group utility with like his mobility, so that makes him pretty strong. But that's just him as a general. Like I think you'd rather play him mid, to be honest with you. Not gonna play that. Not gonna play that. Kali! Kali to me, bro, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'd put her S tier. And the reason why I say this is that, like, I've been tinkering with the builds a little bit on her. And getting items like Crusher for her a little bit earlier gives her early to mid-game boxing potential and kill potential a little bit more stronger. I think that she's a lot more viable a little bit earlier than what people used to consider her timescale. She was best known as, and she's probably one of the better known gods as, this is a late game carry. You get her to late game, she will carry the team fights, and she still does that. However, with the itemization changes, I think that the time frame from when it's like, okay, I'm online, you know, where like now I'm ready, God is kind of scooting up a little bit. So she's a little bit more viable throughout more of the game than less of it now. So she's a little bit more viable. And like her being able to sneak objectives and or go for objective pressure, like towers and stuff like split pushing and all that, she actually could do it. She's really, really good at that. She's viable with multiple options too in terms of build paths. She could do the ability base, she could do attack speed base, she could do the mixture with crit. She has it. She's got it. I think that like if you're able to like build the composition around her and lock her down, she drops down to A tier. But that just goes to show you how much effort is needed to pay attention to her. At every single ranked game I play, a lot of it is, is Kali's ult up? Where is Kali? Blah, blah, blah. Like I think Kali for sure is definitely a presence inside any game she's in. So I think that makes her worth talking about. I think that I think that like if I was being really, really critical of her, I think if you're able to play, and this is not impossible to do, I think if you're able to play around her ultimate and keep track of that very, very effectively, or bait it out of her and continue following her all the way up to the point where her ultimate dies out, and then you do finish up with a kill on her, she's very, very easy to monopolize her on, right? But like I think the deficit, I think I'll bring her down a little bit because I feel like these guys are strong throughout the entire game, whereas like she is definitely more of a early mid-ish, I would say mid. I'm gonna hard say it, mid to late game god. Whereas like these guys, they transcend at all points. They're a problem. I think some of these guys are a little bit like that too. Like he's a hyper carry too as well. He would actually be one that takes a little bit of momentum to get going, but when he's on there, he's kicking, right? So I think they're definitely solid in that regard. And I'll leave it at that. I think she's worth picking, but you got to be very, very careful against the composition you're going against. Loki to me at minimum has to be an A tier. I think I can make an argument for him being S tier though, because he is easy to do what you need from a jungler, but without getting punished. I think he could do it I think he could do it almost better than almost anybody for the most part. So I think Loki actually probably is like one of the higher end gods. Like tit for tat, like for example, I think Camazotz has the best boxing potential. I think that Loki, if he was the one that's initiating on the Camazotz, I would say Loki wins that. Loki wins that. Tit for tat, dude. Tit for tat, I think Loki wins that. But that just goes to show you how close these guys are. I think Loki's definitely top tier. He's worth playing. I'm not fully there with him yet, but I have seen remnants of when I'm starting to play on a Loki. I see remnants of it was like, okay, I'm doing work. And I think that's pretty strong right now. And I'm really, really I think he's really, really happy with the itemization changes they had so far. Yo, who's inviting me? You got the way. I'm almost done with this tier list. Let's see here. I am going to backtrack a little bit. I forgot about Heba. I think Heba is worth notating because he's nasty. I think that he's in the same park as these guys in terms of like late game carry potential. However, I think he's easier to punish. I think he's very easy to punish comparatively to these two gods. I think these two gods have their means of getting in and out of fights if they need to, but whereas like him, if he gets caught out, he has to fight his way out. And a lot of times, if he has to fight his way out, he's dead. No matter what. So that's what makes him weaker. Also, the amount of uptime it takes for him to get up there takes a little bit too as well. So I'm gonna say he's a solid B tier. I forgot about him. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen him in some plays, but I've seen him throw down where he actually kicks some ass too. So he's actually a really, really good. He's a really good choice, especially if your composition is heavy physical. He's a really good replacement for your physical traditional gods like assassins and go more of like a magical based build. On him. These two are really good viability wise. I'd say Cabrakan too. Why not? Mercury, man, since they had the changes to crit so much, I feel like he's fell out of grace. But they did recently nerf Spectral. I don't know if it's enough to a point where he's like super solid. I want to say he's probably like C tier or B tier. He's a hyper carry late game too as well though. I think I'll put him on C or B. I think I'll probably put him at B. If you think we're playing Hui as a jungle, you should put Apollo on this list too. All right, I got you. I'll do that. We'll backtrack for him too as well. I think Mercury's pretty niche. I think you can build him into, like, if you're late game focused. I feel like every other god choice above him right now, though, definitely is more viable. And I would even say that depending on, like, some of the compositions and how they work out, you could probably make an argument for these guys being more viable. But crit Mercury is always going to be a thing. Late game, he's just going to pack a punch, and he's going to be able to do some crazy damage. I think one thing that people get caught slipping with is his ability to ultimate from, like, a tower line where you could barely see, straight to the lane, and catch like a duo lane off guard or something like that in the midst of a fight is actually something that he's really well known for. And just general disruption after that fact, and he could just box people down. But I think that, like, tit for tat, like, if you were against Akali, ult for ult and all that, and they had full beats, full kit and everything like that, she's probably going to win that. Even then, though, it's going to be a very close fight, but still, it's late game for late game, and I feel like it takes even longer for him to get online versus her, I want to say, because of his items. He requires, like, Deathbringer and all that stuff into his kit, right? So I think Deathbringer being one of the more expensive items, if not one of the most expensive items in the game, puts him back a bit. Not to say that she can't build it either, but I'm just saying, like, in itemization world right now, where it's a lot more ability focused and less attack speed and crit focused, he fell off a little bit. I would say he was a little bit higher prior to this recent ability burst meta, but definitely strong. All right, let's backtrack for Apollo. I feel like Apollo is low-key broken because of his global. I think his 1v1 capability against certain assassins, though, makes him a little bit weaker. Would he be better than Hu Yi? He can do what Hu Yi does in terms of, like, auto attack damage. He has Mez, so I think that's a good defensive setup. I mean, he could play it offensively to give people time or to, like, give, like, distance, you know, close distance gaps and whatnot for his team. So he does have that same applicability as, like, Hu Yi's stun. But I think what makes him different from Hu Yi is probably going to be his ultimate, so I'm going to say he's a little bit better. If not, maybe equal. I say he's either B or A. I think I'd say B, because I feel like, tit for tat, if I was playing these gods against an Apollo, I feel like I would do well, as long as my team isn't feeding. And we've had, shout out to Jordy here, we had some people that fed an Apollo. I don't know, I think his ultimate is actually what makes him super strong. Global ults are always a big thing, especially since the map is getting bigger and bigger as time goes on. I feel like his value in terms of globals, like beginning of season 8 when they expanded the map a little bit more. Was it the beginning of season 8? I think it was the beginning of season 8, where they kind of made it a little bit more spacious and whatnot in some of the areas of the map. Globals became super high prioritized, including Athena and Apollo for that matter. He was actually a jungler too as well. So I think he's solid A. I think he takes his early game is not going to be as crazy comparatively to some of the other ones, like his boxing potential. However, once he hits level 5 and onwards, that's when you're just like, all right, it doesn't matter where you are. If that jungler wants to be in that fight, he's going to be in that fight because he has his global. And then items like Transcendence on him, which if he wanted to build, will help kind of sustain his mana a little bit more. So I think he's pretty good. Let's move on. I don't know. I think he could be a solid A or B. I'm going to leave him at B for now, though. I don't think he's bad, but I'd make an argument for, like, late game. These guys are just kind of stomp him, to be real with you. I think we left off at Merc, right? Mulan to me kind of broken in period, dude. I'm gonna be real with you. Her damage scaling is nice. Her damage scaling is actually, like, really, like, it's underrated as all hell. Shoot, even in the solo lane right now, I've seen people top damage with her because of the fact that they just can stay in fights forever. Doesn't matter if you're there or not. They just keep boxing you and they hit that 2 on the same target or however the best way to get your health back from that god is. It's ridiculous. I think the thing that hurts her the most, though, is her 3. And I think if you would go toe for toe, I think Akali would bop a Mulan. I think the same thing for an Kwang and maybe the Fenrir. Dodgy and Achilles would have a little bit of a time with her, I think. Definitely an Achilles would struggle against that if they were going toe to toe because she could out-sustain him. And I dare say that her damage is just as monstrous, if not even crazier. The only difference between these two is I think he has a little bit more range, especially with his 1. So these guys, on the other hand, tit for tat, initiates, she's dead. Initiates, she's dead. Maybe less so much for Gilgamesh because he does take his item. He's very item dependent in terms of his damage scaling. Cleo, damage for damage, she claps. Camazotz trades her out in terms of heals. His 2 and his 3 out heals, I think, them if they were trading off. But her damage is nasty. It's solid. I hate her 3. I think that's the best way I can say it. Her 3 sucks, in my opinion, but it's also super good whenever you land it. But she's super fun to play, man. And especially once she pre-mastery level on her pre-masteries on her kit, like with her passive, she kind of boo-boo. But when she gets adept in, like, mastery, like her mastery's up on her passive, she's a monster. She's an absolute menace, especially in the backline as a solo laner. But as a jungler, she does just as much, and she's super strong. Just maybe a little bit less tankier. Still strong. Still strong. No. Nemesis. I feel like Nemesis fell off kind of the same with Mercury. I dare say she's C tier right now. I've played ability based on her, and I feel like if I was gonna do that build on her, I could just do it with other people, and it's just as fine. I feel like she gets bought by Huyi. She gets bought by Heba. Erlang could kind of bop her with the knockup, so like her 3 is less viable. Stun, knockup, the throw, which is kind of like a knockup, I think. His mez. Like, these guys can all kind of like just kind of keep her down. Stun. This would be a tit for tat, so that would actually be a pretty interesting one. Mulan would be a tit for tat for that too as well, but I think that Mulan's could probably out-sustain her. I don't know, we'll see. Fenrir loses to this late game, though, I think. So that might make her go up a little bit. Daji, I think, clowns on her because she can outbeat her. If she ults onto her, she can just go up in the air, wait for it to go off, and then she'll just go boom, boom, boom. And then I think Achilles can also stun her and keep her out of the fight too as well, pretty well. Executor, she gets low. I don't know. I think she's C tier. C tier or B tier right now at the moment. I don't think she's really all that great. She's good, but she's not phenomenal. And that's not to say, like, none of these guys here are like, you should not play them at all. Maybe except Arachne. She kind of boo-boo. But, like, these guys all have playability, have viability, especially in certain comps where, like, you need this particular thing from this kit to work. I think she has a little bit less than that. She kind of just, like, her standalone thing. But the other guys can kind of do what she does, but just maybe a little bit better. Next on the list is Neja. He sucks. He's pretty much just an ult bot, in my opinion. A lot of times, if you're looking at, like, what he does in his kit, his one doesn't do enough to destroy people, in my opinion. Even with like a full damaging build, a burst ability build, it just doesn't feel like it does that much. The 2 is a nice little heal, but I think that like Mulan's heals better. I feel like Fenrir's heals better. I feel like all these guys can get what they need from her. Like all these guys can do that better, right? 3 as a stun setup, not bad because you can actually immunity frames and stuff there, but it's very, very short. So like they just wait for you to finish that animation and they just clap your cheeks afterwards. And then of course you could also get ultimate, which is another setup initiate for the team, which is not bad. A lot of people like playing Scylla into Neja and like Kumba, for example. So like there's some viability there, but if you need another god to be relevant, in order for you as a god to be relevant, I feel like you're a little bit lower on this list, and I feel like that's definitely something that he has that's not as like, you know, it's not really that great. Odin, I'd probably put next here. I think Odin, to me, would probably be like a solid B tier. B tier or A tier. His initiates, in terms of his ability to lock people down in a cage, can be handled with by Veil or jumping gods / gods that can get out of the cage. So that's less of a detriment. But I've seen a lot of people who play off of let's bait their mobility ability, like Scylla's 3, and then we collapse on her after that. So, like, you know, you could play a tit for tat there. I think in terms of damage and capability, I think he's a little bit weaker there, but his shield is what makes him very, very strong. And I think that's something that's very, very unique to play around. A lot of people get baited into trying to killing Odin, and then he just shields, and like, you think he's, like, low, but in reality, he has this much extra on himself. Like, you know, you have the whole bar here, but he's, like, this much HP. He actually doesn't have that. He has, like, maybe this much because of his shield. So I think a lot of people get confused by that, or they forget about that attribute of him, and he's able to just keep it going and bait people into fights, and I think that makes him a lot better. I think he's a solid B tier. I don't think he's, like, crazy strong, but I think he's a little bit he provides a little bit more than I think some of these guys do. Actually, I think I might give him C tier because I think, like, he has that same par of, like, Humbat's capability than other gods. I think his ability to bait people is a little bit crazier, though. Do you think Bellona has any viability as a jungle? Yeah, I do. Actually, in heavy attack, auto attack compositions, especially since we've seen a lot of resurgence of guys like Oleron, Sol, Kronos, to name a few, and then on top of that with like a hunter ADC and maybe a god that benefits from auto attacks in the jungle / solo lane, to name a few. She has really, really good viability. I think she's very niche pick, so I'd say she's probably solid B because she has really good boxing potential, but she can't out-sustain people, I think. I think if you're going for, like, heals off of that, I think these guys over here do better than her. A lot better than her. And I feel like she can get bullied by some of these guys here, too, as well. So I think she's solid B if we're gonna throw her in there. Quick little rundown. I wasn't going to throw her on the list, but since you said it, we might as well. I played Kumba with Boomba's Hammer OP, but we're not going to throw that in there for the means purposes. Ratatasker. I'm kind of zigzagging through this list, so bear with me. I think Ratatasker's solid B or C. Good semi-global ult. I guess you could call it kind of a global because this is the same distance as what a Thor can do, right? And Thor's ult's global, right? Semi-global? I'd say semi-global. I think that he can do what these guys do, maybe even a little bit better in certain scenarios, but at the same time, too, not without their flaws, or his flaws. I feel like, his 2 is okay in team fights. His ult is really good in team fights. His 3 single target, and so is his 1. Ability meta, he's not too bad from it. I think I'm going to put him C. I kind of don't think that they do all that. Like, him and Thor, like, Ratatesker's just a better Thor, in my opinion. And I feel like he's not too bad. I don't know. I'd make an argument for C or B. I think he's really, really good, though, in compositions where you want to be able to dive the back line. I think he actually does that pretty well. Whether he survives or not, this is a warning case. I think it's very easy to kind of pick out that he's in the air. You can hear it from the audio cues, and you can see it pretty well, too. Unless there's certain areas of the map where, like, there's a lot of shrubbery, like trees and stuff, so... I don't know. Depending on how you do it, at best he's B, at worst he's C. So I'll probably go off of, like, you're playing really, really well, so I'll give him a B for now. I think the same thing's going to be for Thor, too, as well. I think a lot of that's going to be the same page. Osiris, he fell off. He fell off a little bit. I think he's kind of in the same boat as, like, Bakasura. Really good boxing potential, but because they nerfed a couple items that he was able to kind of do a more bruisery build, and also they nerfed Ikaval, attack speed, Mannequins got nerfed even more, which was ridiculous. I think that, like, he'd probably be, like, C tier. I think that he could go toe-to-toe with maybe a Bellona for a little bit. I think an Erling would give him a run for his money with his ability to heal, but I think, like, he's healing, then you ulti on top of that so he doesn't get much from his heal. You might be able to stalemate that out. That's a very, very close fight, I think. But I also feel like that may justify bringing them down a little bit, too, though, because I feel like these guys just kind of blow them up in the later game. I don't know. He might be a little bit better because of what he could contribute, but I think that, like, Bakasura's stuff is a little bit more instant gratification in terms of their CC, whereas his 3 takes a little bit to get on, and he has, like, a root with his ult and anti-heal. So I'd say, like, at best, we'll go off of best. I think he could do a little bit more in terms of team-oriented fights, and he's a little bit tankier by nature and base play against that. And I like going berserkers on him, so I think he actually can do, like, a little bit more still of that balance between what do you call it? Between being brawlery and just straight up damage oriented. But I think he still falls shy of, like, the ability based meta because it takes him too long to 1v1 somebody and kill them really quickly, whereas these guys can do it like boom, 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 I'm out. You know? So I feel like he's a little bit weaker for that, and all the nerfs that they did to not only his kit, but to the items that make him really, really special right now, kind of brings him down on this list. I'm actually going to bring him down to C. I think he struggles a little bit in the later game. Pele. I forgot about Pele. I feel like Pele is... She might be a little bit of a sleeper. She has some really good CC in her kit, but I think that she's very conditional. I think she loses a lot in the late game. And then some of her stuff is a little conditional upon her team composition. So I think she's C. Good burst, though. She has really, really strong burst, but she definitely needs to be able to survive. So I think that's going to be something we have to watch out for sure. I don't really have much to give it to her. I think her knockouts are really cool. She has some really good movement speed with her stuff, but later on in the game, that kind of doesn't matter for her because she needs to be able to burst people, and sometimes you can't do that trade-off the way you want to. I don't know. I feel like she's very easy to lock down with all these gods above her, so I'm probably going to go with her being C. Maybe B. B at best. I don't know. I feel like I'm contradicting myself in some of these things here, but I'm going to roll with it. Robin, to me, is a solid A tier. Ability burst meta, he's solid in. He can still do the crit meta if he wanted to, if that ever comes back. I think attack speed meta, I've done it. It's not bad, but I don't think it's like the best on him. But his 2 and his CC immune ult make him so much more viable, so you can bait people out into blowing stuff on him, and then the team just benefits from all that wasted, kit being blown on him. You capitalize that by throwing your kit at them, and then they lose from it, right? Really good to disengage and reinitiate with his ultimate. Being able to surprise people. If you play him well enough, he's super solid. I don't think he really loses any matchups per se. I think the later the fights go on against some of these guys right here, he has a lot more of a trouble being able to deal with him. Like, I think tit for tat, like, if he's going to initiate with you with his ultimate, you just pop your ult and you just go ham on him, right? And at that point, he's got a 2 and hopefully survive your damage and maybe burst you down when you get out of your ult, right? But that means that, like, fight for fight, it's going to be a very interesting play. But I think these guys they all can provide something that will combat him, but he also has the same thing in tandem. So these guys, I feel like they can kind of do a little bit what he does, just better and a little bit more aggressively, and I think that's why I put them a little bit higher. And they're a little bit more easier to do too as well. I think he could be an argument for S, I think, for sure. But solid guy. I just don't play him as much as I used to. We're almost at the end of the line for some of these assassins and the warriors, I think. Serket to me is niche. She's really good into auto attack gods like Bologna is. I'm gonna bring Bologna down because of this, because she also benefits more from the ability based meta. Bologna doesn't. She has to go auto attack mannequins type stuff, and I feel like they can trade her off, and I think Serket beats her. So I'm gonna bring Bologna down. But I think Serket can do all the things these guys can do. Maybe a little bit less with certain semi-global ults and whatnot, but her ability to be a menace against auto attack gods and whatnot, and just be anti-heal in her kit, like she has a lot going for her, and she's very, very slippery. A good Serket will always be able to slip and slide through a team fight most of the times, and it's gonna be very, very hard for you to kill her because she's so mobile, which is an attribute she has over certain other gods. Only that sucks is that she's still damageable, I think, when she's ulting people, and I think that kind of doesn't put her into the A or S tier. I think if she was damage immune during that period, she'd probably be up here a little bit more. Set to me, I've seen some people throw down on Set, and I've seen some people just boof on Set, like me. I'm trash at this god. I think that he's very easy to lock down. He doesn't have a CC immune ult, so like I think that's very easy to do, but he is slippery with his 3. I think anti-heal on him also is very, very, very punishing for him, and like I don't know. I think he can do really good. I think he's a solid A. I hate to say it because I'm not in love with this guy. I want to be in love with this guy, but I'm not in love with this guy. I think he could be a solid A, but he's not there yet for me. I think at best A, at worst B tier. So he could be anywhere between these two depending on like where you're scaling him at. And I think he's very, very solid. Let's do Susano. Susano to me is S tier as well. He can get in and out very, very easily outside of gods that like Odin, for example, who can punish him if he's in the middle of like, an area. But his ability just to initiate on somebody and like burst him down, I think he's solid. I think he's really, really good. I think an argument can be made for him to be A tier because of his ability to get locked down. But I think for the most part, I'll say this: I went against a really strong jungler as a Gilgamesh, and I beat the shit out of a Susano. And it was trade for trade. Like, it basically got to the point where whoever initiates on who wins. And I've had games where Susano just absolutely destroys us. So, you can go both sides. I think he is kind of constricted to like guys like Ares who can cripple him. I think he definitely has that kind of thing going against him. But that just means he's initiating it wrong though. Then because you don't want to be initiating in a place where you're going to get CC instantly. I think a lot of those times you want to be kind of like, you want to be a flanker slash an isolationist. You want to play it kind of like, you want to play around the fight as it's happening and get your picks as you go along. And then sometimes if you're that far ahead, you just full send it and you just kill everybody, right? Because your damage is so high with the ability-based burst, right? I think he's solid regardless. I think there's a lot of ways you can kind of play around with him. His kit is interchangeable with each other with the auto cancels. Like you get really good Hydro procs. Like there's just like his kit just works well within itself. And then when you add that with other players on top of that, it's even better. But his kit standalone, tit for tat, is actually just really, really good. So I'll give Susano a good play on that. Thanatos, to me, I've seen really, really good and really, really bad. I think he's solid in this meta. He kind of falls in line with Fenrir, in my opinion. I feel like Fenrir and him are kind of like two sides of the same coin. Very, very strong early is what they were known for. Fall off a little bit late. They're kind of more of an old bot late game. But I think that with the itemization changes they have, some people build semi-tanky with him with like the starters going Sigil or some weird shit like that. And still being able to be a menace in the early game, right? And then their segue into late game because they do so much damage just allows in a box. I think his lifesteal is by far one of the better ones just in general. His scythe, if you can land that, he is a menace. He is actually just a raffle stomp. He just claps. If he lands scythe, that fight is his to win. If he loses scythe, that is your fight to win. And I think that's a lot of what that's what makes him super, super conditional. Whereas, like, it doesn't matter if he doesn't have his ultimate. It doesn't matter if he doesn't have his insert random ability here. They still have a strong kit that will do the work for them too as well. Whereas, like, I feel like his scythe is just like you have to be on point with that scythe in ranked games or in games in general in order to be like, this guy's OP. And I think that right there would make him, I think a perfectly land, like you don't miss your size, S tier. I think if you miss your size, he's still pretty strong in boxing fights. And I think that makes him viable at A tier. Execute 2 goes past Kefri, which has been a recent pick that I've seen a lot of support start to go a lot more of. So I think that's something that's kind of interesting that he actually has more viability play into. But just to give you an example, I think it's a really, really fun god. I think that he can go toe-to-toe with any of the gods here or below him, and he can even make an argument for some of the gods here. So I think an argument could be made from an S, but I think on average, considering the player base as it is, A tier solid. I think that the next one is going to be Tsukiyomi, and I think that's going to be rounding out our list. I don't think there's anybody else here that I really think I want to add. I'm going to add Uller, actually, too, as well. I think I skipped him. I think Tsukiyomi's B tier. I think tit for tat, he can box against some of these gods, but I think a lot of what makes him weak is his inability to escape. His ultimate, like, his whole kit, basically, if he's in a fight and, like, they turn on him, he has to fight his way out. And a lot of time he's gonna need his teammate to follow up to keep him out of death's range, and a lot of times he doesn't escape. So I think that really, really strong in terms of like what the ability burst meta gives him, ability to dive people in the back lane, all that, still really, really strong. But I think that like if you're looking at like the whole playing field and the ability to kind of lock somebody down, he's one of the easier gods to lock down, I think. And I think that's definitely an argument that can be made for him there. Half the guys in A can now box Susano. I think so too. That's what I'm saying. An argument can be made for him being both of there, but I just feel like with a full burst meta and your ability to sneak up on people and just like go full ham so quickly allows him to be really, really quick. Like I think he could beat out of Mulan. Like if Jungle Mulan versus a Jungle Susano, I think like a Susano can do it. You know what I mean? I think that they like he can be an argument for both. I'm gonna stand by that. I think he's either A tier or S tier. I think these guys still beat him though, for the most part. I think maybe except for Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh can get his ass kicked by Susano too. But I think he's definitely solid A, if not maybe even S. I guess if we're going based on average play though, I think he's probably A. So I'll take that argument. I think that Tsukiyomi is also in the same boat too, though. He can actually box with some of these guys, but like at the same time too, he's very easy to capture out, and his escape ability is not as strong as others. So I think that he loses to some of these matchups if they're playing on equal footing. Oh yeah, Thor and Uller. I gotta do that. Thor, I feel like is on the same page as Ratatasker, but just a little bit weaker. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Thor personally. Uller to me is also on the same page as the other ADCs. His one-shot mechanic or his combo mechanic of being able to one-shot people, especially if they don't have beads, is like really, really good. And I think his cooldown, like, if you're going like full ability and you got like the CD with Jotuns and all of those other items, his ability to get beads off of somebody for an 8-second cooldown is super worth. And I think he's really, really cool. Really, really cool. I think this is a good representation of what I consider a tier list, in my opinion. There might be some guys that we could probably throw in there, but I'm not going to go out of my way for it. These are guys that I typically see in the meta, or I see in ranked in some point in time in my career, and I think they're pretty good. I think I'd put these guys up there in terms of like what would be viable. And I think that every single god has an argument that can raise them up a tier, maybe even two, or lower them a tier. Or two, depending on like circumstance, and a lot of this is based on circumstantial stuff that I tried not to base it off of, but just like what can they provide to a team fight, what can they provide to a 1v1 fight, and their ability to do that throughout the entire game is what I kind of base my metrics off of. So I think that's a good rendition of what I think will help that. If you disagree with it, feel free to drop a comment. I would love to see what you guys have to say about it. And I think that'll be a good way to kind of tell me what you guys think about it, bro. And I look forward to going tit for tat for you guys on that. So have a good day and stay ascended.